What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. More details have emerged about this crazy Raja Jackson case and arrest, even though currently, just FYI, Raja Jackson was arrested on Thursday, but he has since been released. He bailed out or was bonded out of jail. That is because I know people were saying, wow, it's only $5,000. It's so easy to get out of jail in America. But again, that is because bail was actually set to $50,000. But you're able to, in this country, as long as you can provide 10% of that fee to a bail bondsman, they can front the rest of the cash. You can get released. So that's what happened. He got released. This is no special treatment. This is just how it goes. The only curious thing about folks saying that this is an aggravated battery charge, and this is what I was trying to figure out on Thursday, is it doesn't match the bail schedule in Orange County, which basically sets the standard levels of bail per crime. Aggravated battery is usually a $25,000 bail, but instead he was given $50,000. Now, of course, the bail schedule doesn't mean that it's always the same amount of bail per crime, per offense. It can vary based on priors, based on flight risk, based on a number of factors. So maybe there's a reason why they upped it from 25,000 to 50,000. I don't know what that reason is, but anyways, it does seem fairly certain from what I'm seeing on YouTube and from other reports that aggravated battery is the charge that they landed on. Now, just to show you another great source, somebody that I've been following throughout this whole ordeal that has said himself it is an aggravated battery charge, is Legal Mindset. It's an awesome YouTube channel. This guy's an attorney. And overall, I think his thoughts and opinions are spot on this case in general. There is one thing, though, that I think he missed, which I'm a little surprised by. And again, as I've mentioned many times on this channel, I am an attorney. I'm not a criminal defense attorney. I don't practice law anymore, but I'm still licensed to practice law in the state of California. And I'm kind of confused why he missed one of the potential defenses to aggravated battery, but we're going to get to that later. Anyways, here's a clip from Legal Mindset where he talks about the nature of the charge itself. Check this out.
So under the statute, the California statute, under California Penal Code 243, there's battery with serious bodily harm. It's also called aggravated battery. So for brevity, for shortness, we're going to just call it aggravated battery. So this can either be a misdemeanor or a felony. Now, in this case, they have charged him with the felony version. So don't think it's the lightest version. They could have gone even lighter with the charges. Now, what does this mean? What does serious bodily injury mean? It means serious impairment of someone's physical condition, regardless of whether a medical treatment is necessary. So losing a tooth, loss of consciousness, a cut under the eye, broken teeth, wounds to the eyebrow, lips, bone fractures, broken bones, serious disfigurement. We have a lot of those actually in this case.
I think we had all of those actually in this case. We have every single one of those injuries that were listed there. Those have gone down. By the way, just a quick clarification. You might be wondering, why is the same crime categorized in California as both a potentially a misdemeanor or a felony? It gives the legal system an option as to, based on the severity of the crime, which way they want to go. This just happened with me where I was the victim of a crime for a certain charge. Again, there was a felony and a misdemeanor version, and the courts and the police system decided to apply the felony charge because of the repetitive nature of the crime and different things like that. So anyways, just to clarify, why is it a misdemeanor and a felony? That doesn't make sense. That's why they can choose which category to place the offense in. And obviously, being a first-time offender usually weighs in favor of it being a misdemeanor, but here I'm sure it's the severity of the beating, the fact that he nearly killed the man, I think is what led them to apply the aggravated battery charge. I still think they could have applied an attempted murder charge here, which would have been like a $500,000 or $1 million bail. So it's definitely not that. I still think they could have. I believe that they chose not to for probably myriad reasons. One of which is likely that maybe they didn't think they could get the charge to stick. I don't know what the entire reasoning and rationale was behind that decision, but I'm sure the police made it in tandem with the DA's office, and this is what they landed on: aggravated battery. So again, just to go over these elements that he had mentioned, there's several elements. Like, you have to willfully, that just means intentionally, like you're trying to do it. It wasn't like you tripped over your shoelace or whatever. You willfully and unlawfully, and this is something that he doesn't touch upon, the unlawful part. And this is where I think he misses something. But unlawfully, meaning against the law, touch another person in a harmful or offensive manner. Again, right? You touch somebody within an octagon, within a wrestling match where there is consent. That's no longer unlawful. Okay, this is the part that I'm going to focus on when we get to the defenses a little bit later. But anyways, that's one of the elements. The second is the touch or contact cause the victim to suffer serious bodily injury, as opposed to just regular battery. Here, there must be serious bodily injury. Obviously, that element has definitely been met, and you didn't act in self-defense or defense of others. So those are the those are the self-defense, the defenses that could come in and say, oh, wait a minute, we can get out of this. Yes, the act was committed, but it was done in self-defense or something else, and therefore the crime should not be applied. So for example, if we have a murder charge, right, you could have committed the act, but then you still may be found not guilty because one of these defense elements, you acted in self-defense. Well, I had to do it. Otherwise I was going to die myself. That can then get you out from underneath that charge and essentially exonerate a person. Now, this second portion here, there's a enhancement. So we have this in California. You have a crime, and then you can have circumstances or situations within the crime that occurred that would enhance the charges. So there's an enhancement here for great bodily injury. It says if the victim's injury qualifies as great bodily injury, so beyond serious bodily injury, which is a significant or substantial injury, you can face an additional 3 to 6 years in prison on top of the felony sentence. So this is kind of interesting because we're going to go through the sentences, or he's going to talk about them. So he actually says up to 6 years. The part that I'm not sure about, and I think what they're saying is 3 to 6 years on top of the felony sentence. So the felony sentence alone is 1 to 4 years. So does that mean this could be 6 years in total, or 6 years plus the 1 to 4 years? I'm not totally sure. So he seems to say that it's a 6-year max sentence that he's facing. I'm not sure if this means 6 years or 7 to 10. Either way, I don't think he's going to get the max. He's a first-time offender. And that's not because he's Rampage's son. There's not special treatment. That's just how the legal system goes. Usually first-time offenders are given a lot more leniency in terms of the sentencing, and they usually go on the lighter side as opposed to the heavier side. There's exceptions to that, but that's usually how it goes. Anyway, so there's this great bodily injury enhancement. I do think it should and will come into play here, but like I said, we'll see how it goes. All right, now he's going to talk about some of the defenses, the things that his legal team could argue to try and get him out from underneath this charges, to try and maybe get a lower sentence or a slap on the wrist or something like that. So this is what he mentions here.
What are the defenses? Let's talk about that. First is self-defense. So is there any scenario where this could be self-defense? Well, you need to meet all three elements. First, you believe the person has to believe that they are at risk of serious bodily harm. Second, you have to believe the force was necessary to stop the harm. And third, you use no more force than was necessary. So this may have applied. You can make an argument, right? You can make an argument that in a fight, right, if you're in a fight, that using some force to stop that fight is enough. Here's the problem. He was unconscious. He was knocked out. He was flatlined, right? If this guy was just completely not able to fight back at all. At that point, you have a duty to stop. At that point, your self-defense, even if that would be an argument, it's not. It's not an argument at all. Because when a guy is not fighting back, when he is out cold, no, sorry, you don't get to keep going. That's when you have to stop. That's use no more force than was necessary. So even if Roger wanted to defend on that, that's not going to work. So self-defense is out. Next, you need to say there's no serious bodily injury. Now, you would need medical testimony for this, an expert. This is not going to fly. He definitely has serious injury. And even it's so serious, it might aggravate it up to another level. We'll talk about that. But definitely he's not going to get off on no serious injury, because that's just not, there's no proof that this guy had a minor bump or something like that. No. This is real. The last is if it's an accident. So if you do an accidental touch, like you trip on somebody and then they're harmed, that would not count. So that kind of negates the willful part, right? Not on purpose. So if you have an accident, it's not on purpose. So that's where we get that. So yes, this was not an accident. He didn't trip and fall on his face 10 to 11 times. No, he punched him in the face 10 or 11 times after he was clearly not able to fight back. So yeah, that's clearly what happened there. Very brutal.
It's weird that he would even mention self-defense, because to me, it's self-defense is the most obvious one that doesn't apply. There wasn't even an attack. You could argue self-defense if it happened within very, very close temporal proximity to when he was hit with the beer can, but obviously that didn't happen. There was a major cool down period. I mean, I don't even understand that. He just ran in there, picked him up, threw him. There's no self-defense. But what's funny is he mentioned the willful element, but he didn't mention the unlawful element. That's the part that surprised me. I really do believe he made a mistake here in his analysis by not addressing that, because the only viable defense, all the other ones he mentioned, aren't even anything that I would think of or anybody would even, I think, give serious consideration to. But the one that is interesting, that is in the wrong spot. I don't know how that happened. That's supposed to be covering the unlawful part. But the part that is relevant is consent. Consent would be the defense that I would imagine they're going to try and argue or try and cling to. Now, the defense of consent says the alleged victim consented explicitly or implicitly to the contact or risk. This makes a lot of sense in MMA fights and wrestling matches, etc., because there's going to be contact. You're agreeing to get into the ring and have contact. But with serious injuries or certain acts, I think I cut that off. But anyways, I think it was going to say that then consent may not be a viable option. It may not be here. Let me click into this here. Let's expand this out a little bit. May not be valid or when it's beyond, what does it say? Beyond socially acceptable norms. So that's the situation, right? Consent is not going to be valid here, obviously. And there's other reasons. There's other case law that I pulled up, but there's multiple reasons for this. Obviously, he went way beyond what was consented. What was explicitly consented to. That goes beyond a doubt. He must know about wrestling. I'm sure that will show if this does go to trial and discovery happens. He probably knew what a receipt meant to some extent. But even if he didn't, to go to the extent that which he went, I mean, it's so beyond socially acceptable norms that it's, this is out the window completely. And on top of that, I've also read case law that when somebody is unconscious, they can no longer consent to that bodily injury. So while he was conscious, maybe there was consent there, but as soon as the slam landed and he was knocked out, those 23 subsequent punches obviously were beyond the scope of consent, so it's not going to apply. And again, to convict, the reason why this is important as a defense and what element that it negates is this one. You willfully, so we talked about self-defense, but he didn't talk about this. This would negate the unlawful portion, because if you consent, if you step into an octagon or a sanctioned fight, now it's not illegal. Now it doesn't qualify as battery. That being said, this would be, to me, this would be the only reasonable defense that the defense could offer, but it's not going to work. No way, no how. So this is going to be clear cut. Now, again, going into the limits of consent, you can see here, consent must be freely given, not coerced, fraudulent, obtained by misrepresentation, whatever. So invalid consent does not serve as a defense. I don't even think this was invalid consent. I think this was probably given, but then the scope of consent, here's what I was talking about, the limitations. Even when someone consents, if the actor exceeds the scope of what was consented to, that excess is not protected. So no matter which, and this is what I've been saying from the get-go, no matter how you slice it, if you want to say the slam was within the scope of consent, fine. I don't even think the slam was. But if you want to go that far, okay, maybe that's the farthest I'll let you go. Then you could say he wants to, the people are then making an argument that no, but he said you could get a receipt. He thought that meant to hit him for real, so he hit him for real. I disagree with this, but if you want to say yes, fine. You could say 1, 2, a couple hits would be acceptable, but he knew that the referees were going to tell him when to stop. And there is a scene where the referee is waving him off after the first several blows are landed, and he just ignores it. Then the referee tries to stop him, and he pushes him off. Then Doug Malo had to step in, or another wrestler tried to pull him off, and he shoved him off. Then Doug Malo pulls in, and he still tries to fight Doug Malo off. Doug Malo picks him up. Then he starts to fight Doug Malo. That could be another charge of battery, by the way, if the police and the DA wanted to hand that charge out. My point is the consent got limited way, way, way early on. To me, after the first slam, it was out because he was already unconscious. But if you want to say a few more strikes after that, maybe that's the farthest you can go. Still, at least 10 or 15 of those insanely horrible strikes would be beyond the scope of consent, in my opinion. So that's the only possibility for a defense, and it's out the window. Now let's talk about sentencing, and Legal Mindset explains it here. Check this out.
Cool. This is the sentencing. If it was a misdemeanor, it would be only up to 1 year or $1,000, which is really nothing. That's really a nothing burger. But that's not what they charged him with. They charged him with a felony. A felony is up to 4 years in jail and a maximum fine of $10,000. Now, I know what you're saying, Andrew. I see the title. It says up to 6 years in jail. Is this clickbait? No, it's not. Let's talk about this. because the sentencing depends on the severity and criminal history. And there's an exception. If there's what they call great bodily harm, it can go up to 6 years. So that's where we get this. If the court finds there is great bodily harm, they can tag on an extra 2 years to the maximum of the felony. So it can go up to 6. What's required for that? Well, a concussion, broken bones, or contusions count. So we have a chance. I'm not 100% on whether any bones were broken. I know they were fractured. But with the concussion and the contusions, that is very much possible. We got to look at the injuries, but that's very much possible here. So yes, it is possible for up to 6 years. So with this, what do I think is going to happen? What's the reality of what's going to happen? Well, remember, he's a first-time offender. So yes, he could face up to 6 years. And it's always possible that they want to give him a harder sentence because they want to make sure they're not light on crime, et cetera, et cetera. It's always possible. They could look at the video and say, hey, look, this was really bad. Shouldn't have done this. We're going to put this up to, a greater amount. However, I do think that he's probably not going to get more than a year or two maximum in prison. I do think it's a first-time offense. They're not going to throw them away and put him in the jail cell and throw away the key. I think he's going to get that at least, definitely some community service. You could, of course, see it as low as a couple months. You could even see probation. But I don't think that up to 6 years is going to necessarily happen. So, yes, he's facing it. Yes, it's possible. Yes, it's on the books. But do first-time offenders get the maximum sentence? No. They don't often.
I agree with him there. First-time offender, as I said, he's probably going to get something much lighter than the full scope of the sentence. But I do think he made a mistake. Now, as that clip was in terms of the 6 years, I actually think it's more. So I mentioned earlier, it's 6 on top of the felony charge, which is 1 to 4. I just did a quick query in ChatGPT as I was playing. I want to show you guys what it came back with. So, I'm not just making this up. Again, I was reading it myself, and that's what made sense to me. You're adding the 6 years onto the felony charge, which already, so it's not concurrent. It's not, what's it called? Concurrent. It's consecutively added on. So 6 plus 4, you can see right here, it says up to, where'd it go now? There it is. Base felony sentence plus GBI enhancement, 10 years in state prison. So, in fact, I know Legal Mindset is saying up to 6 years, but I'm going to title this up to 10 years because that's what I read in the statute. I think he made a couple of mistakes here, honestly. And I like his channel, but he made a mistake about not calling out consent. I don't know. That to me is the number one defense. I don't know why he missed that. And number two, I think he got the sentencing thing wrong. I don't think it's up to 6 years. It's up to 10 years. That's my reading of the statute, coupled with what ChatGPT brought back. Again, I was already thinking that. ChatGPT just reinforces. So that's what I think. I think he made a mistake there. So this is crazy that he could face that much. Will he get it? I highly doubt it. Again, not because of any special treatment. That's just how the legal system works. And I think it's right for working that way. So there we have it. There is the up-to-date information on Raja Jackson's arrest. He is right now out, bonded out. I don't know when his hearing is scheduled. I don't even know if this is going to go to trial. I imagine they're going to try to strike some sort of a plea agreement or plea deal, and we'll see what that deal stipulates, whether it will be 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, anger management, all of the above. We shall see. But either way, he got the charge. I think it's a fair charge. I think they could have gone higher. I'm sure there was a reason why they chose not to. What I mean is in terms of applying a heftier charge like attempted murder or something like that. I think they could have gone for it and then use that to negotiate and get a more favorable plea agreement. I'm talking about on the prosecutor side. Why they didn't, I don't know. Maybe they thought it would have been so intense of a charge that he would have tried to fight it and he could have gotten out from underneath. This has happened in the past. So it's where they go for the big charge, and then because it's such a leap to get that big charge, they don't want to plea out. They just take it to trial and they beat it all together. They serve no jail time. So maybe that's what the thought process was. Whatever it is, this is the charge. I think people in general, like myself, who just want to see justice being done and know that we live in a safe society, we're satisfied. And now we'll see how it all plays out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think he should get somewhere closer to 10 years? Do you think it should be closer to 1 year, given he has no priors and it seems like his first felony ever? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.